Now that we've gone over the core concepts behind manipulating HTML, and especially HTML attributes from JavaScript, let's talk about creating HTML from JavaScript. So in order to create a new HTML element, you're going to run a function called document.createElement. And inside the parentheses following create element, you are going to insert as a string the type of element you want to create, the tag of the element you want to create, like a div or an h1 or an image, img. Okay, now creating an element does not cause it to automatically render on your HTML document. You're not going to see it anywhere. That element is created, but it's currently just floating around in memory, in cyberspace. It doesn't exist anywhere that we can see it or interact with it yet. So a good practice to start with when you are creating a new element is to store it in a variable. So I'm going to call this variable new div, and I'm going to store document.createElement div inside of it. Let's save that, load my page, and call the new div variable. There it is. It contains an empty div, an empty HTML div element object. Okay, so I can now do anything that I want to this div, the way that you would to a div that is rendered on your HTML. I can now give new div a class name of let's give new div a class name of container. Okay, we're still using some Bootstrap classes here. So new div is going to have a class name of container. And I'm going to give new div a min height of 500 pixels. Okay, reload my page. I'm going to call new div now in my console. And it is a div with a class of container, bgdark, and style attribute equal to min height 500 pixels, which is awesome. It now has all of these additional features to it. However, it's still not showing up on our page. It's still not rendering in our HTML. So to cause it to show up on our page, to cause it to render, we need to append it or add it to our document body. So to do that, I'm going to select my document.body, and I'm going to run on my body element the append child function. And the append child function is going to take as an argument the element which I want to add. If I do that, then when I reload my page, we see the container. And it's going to behave like a container, a Bootstrap container, because I have Bootstrap connected to my index.html. So that is how we create an element in JavaScript. We manipulate that element in JavaScript, and we add that element to our body in JavaScript. But let's not stop there. Let's start adding some elements to new div. Let's create a new h1 document.createElement h1. And let's give this new h1 some text content. And let's give it a class just for some practice. Class name equals another Bootstrap class, text. Well, no. Yeah, let's do text uppercase and display 4. 2 Bootstrap classes. Now we want to add new h1 to our document so we can see it. But we don't want to run the same exact code, document.body.append child new h1, because if we do that, look at what happens. Our h1 is added to our document below our new div. If you look in the Elements tab, we can see that very clearly. Down at the bottom of my body, we have the div, new div, followed by the h1. The h1 is not inside the div like we wanted. So what we need to do instead is change the target of our append child function from document.body, in this case, to new div. So first we add new div to the document body, and then we add new h1 to new div. And now our h1 is inside the div. Let's add a new class name to new div of text white so we can see that text a little clearer. There we go. Let's take this a step further. So between new h1 and new div, let's create new div 2. It's going to be another div. Except new div 2 is going to be a jumbotron. A bootstrap jumbotron. And it's going to have a light blue background color, BG info, another bootstrap class. And we are going to add new h1 to new div 2 instead of to new div. Oh, I never added new div 2 to the document. So now we're going to add new div 2 to new div. Okay, so we add new div to the body, we add new div 2 to new div, we add new h1 to new div 2. Just like this, we're creating and layering elements in HTML. We have an h1 inside of a jumbotron, inside of a container, all created in JavaScript, all rendered in JavaScript. So now let's take this a step further, and how can we render elements in JavaScript using a function? I'm going to create a button. That has an onClick attribute which invokes a createStuff function. And that's it. That's all that's going to be in our HTML right now. But in our JavaScript, when createStuff is invoked, we are going to create some elements. So let's try this in a little bit of different organizational order this time. I'm going to create a div. I'm going to create an h1. I'm going to create an image. And now let's give them each some content. New h1 dot inner text is going to equal this is a beagle. New image dot source is going to equal, let's find an image of a beagle. Okay. Now we also want an alt for that image, for sure. .alt, new image.alt equals, how about this? New image.alt equals new h1.inner text. So now this is going to be plugged in here. So the alt for the image is going to be the same as our visible label, the new h1. Okay, and the content for new div is going to be new h1 and new image. So when I click this button, once again, I didn't add them to the body. Always got to remember, after you create your elements, you format them, you do everything you want with them, you still need to, at some point, add them to an element that is already in your HTML, like your body. There we go. So I reload, click my button, and everything renders. And if we inspect, let's inspect that element, we can see that the alt contains the string, this is a beagle, because that's what is contained in new h1.inner text. All right, so just like that, with a click of a button, we have used a function to dynamically create 3 elements, give them a little formatting and content, and append them to our document body. For the projects for this week, you're going to be taking this quite a bit further, building a to-do list, building a comment app. So you're going to want to think about how to dynamically generate comments with the click of a button. A user is going to visit your site. They're going to type their name into an input field. They're going to type a comment into a text area field. And you are going to need to take the content of what they've written, create new elements, plug the user's text into those new elements, format those new elements the way you want, and add them to your page.